3 miles. Nobody can shoot that far. Sergeant Mason's shout was lost in the wind, but Emily Whitaker didn't flinch. Her finger rested on the trigger, her eyes locked onto the target across the Afghan valley. One bullet could rewrite history. One mistake could kill her team. But what Emily didn't reveal was a darker truth. She wasn't just a sharpshooter from Montana.
Pretty impressive.
She was the product
Either
of a
you are
legacy
genius
buried
or
for
you have got
decades,
something
the
the rest of
Artemis
us do not
program.
know about.
A program that turned rare individuals with unique genes into living weapons, tools for political schemes never reported on the news. And in the moment she squeezed the trigger, Emily had to ask herself, was she fighting for freedom or just a pawn in a bloody game? The Montana sky stretched like a vast blue canvas. White clouds drifted slowly over sunlit mountain ranges. Emily Whitaker sat on an old wooden fence. Her Winchester, 270, rested across her knees. Her eyes tracked the faint movement of a prairie dog emerging from a distant mound. She didn't measure the distance with a ruler. She didn't calculate formulas in her head, but her body had long mastered those laws. How the wind shifted, how light bent the sight picture, how many inches a bullet would drop. Her finger tightened slightly. The shot echoed through the valley, and when the gun smoke cleared, the mound was empty. But the echo of the shot couldn't drown out another truth. Her home, a 3,000-acre ranch, was dying. Beneath the faded paint of the porch roof, her mother Margaret hung another bank notice.
Pretty impressive.
6 months. That was all the time they had before the land, held by 4 generations of Whitakers, would be foreclosed. Her father, Thomas, stared silently at the bank statement. Each number carved a wound in his heart. His calloused hands, once used to till the soil, now trembled as they stacked piles of debt papers. In the small kitchen, where the pendulum clock ticked with harsh precision, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and despair. Emily leaned against the wall, rifle still in hand, listening to her father's sigh. We can stretch it another 6 months, but after that, he trailed off. His aging eyes still gazed at the drought-cracked fields. Emily knew her father wasn't one to give up easily. He'd survived Middle Eastern battlefields. He carried scars that never healed. But this time, the enemy had no clear form. It bore the names of interest rates, plummeting cattle prices, and barren land. That night, as the house slept, Emily sat on the old porch swing, her laptop balanced on her knees. The dim screen lit her tense but determined face. She read and reread the military recruitment website. Her eyes lingered on the section labeled Sniper Training, Special Operations. The words weren't just a chance to escape poverty, to Emily. They were a hidden path, leading away from the small town where everyone knew her as the girl who shoots well, but no one believed she could change her fate. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. Richard Whitaker's words, "Skill without purpose is just showing off, but skill in the right place can change the world." The next morning, Emily drove the old pickup to Blackwater High School. In the familiar gym, a folding table stood neatly arranged. Behind it sat Sergeant Frank Thompson in crisp military uniform. His weathered face carried sharp, experienced eyes. Stacks of recruitment flyers lay like invitations for rural kids to escape a bleak future. Emily handed over her prepared file, a list of shooting achievements, certificates from local hunting competitions. Thompson skimmed it, his brow furrowed. An 800-yard grouping under 2 inches. Consecutive hits beyond a mile. A hand-calculated ballistics chart that could have come from a military manual. He looked up at the 8-year-old girl before him. These numbers, are they real? Emily answered firmly, "Yes, and I can prove it any time." A heavy silence followed. Thompson folded the file, but instead of dismissing her, he placed a business card on the table. "Next week, there's a shooting test at Fort Harrison. If what you've written here is true, I'll personally ensure your file gets reviewed." Emily took the card. It felt heavier than a small piece of paper. This wasn't just a chance to save the ranch. It was an escape, a way to prove her talent stretched beyond Montana's borders. That afternoon, as the pickup rattled down the gravel road back to the ranch, Emily caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. A young face, hair tousled by prairie wind. But in her eyes, for the first time, she saw something new. The belief that she was stepping toward a threshold. Ahead lay glory or an abyss. Behind her, Montana was sinking into the shadow of debt. Was Emily Whitaker just a ranch girl? Or a piece of something greater, more dangerous that she didn't yet understand? Dear listeners, pause for a moment to subscribe to the channel before diving into the heart of the story, but only if you truly connect with what I'm sharing here. Drop a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. It's exciting to see people from all over joining us. Montana's dawn broke with pale golden light sweeping across the hills. But for Emily, everything was tinged with unease. She rose early. She slipped quietly past the barn and headed straight to the old wooden shed at the ranch's edge. There, beneath dust and cobwebs, secrets lingered, ones she'd only dared to brush against as a child. The rusted lock resisted, but the old key her father kept in a drawer fit perfectly. When the bolt clicked, the door groaned like a sigh from the past. The air inside smelled of decayed wood, old gun oil, and memories. Emily stepped slowly, light filtered through wooden slats, casting hazy beams onto stacked crates, forgotten farm tools, and, at the far end, a low iron chest coated in dust, so thick it nearly blended with the earth. She recognized it instantly. This was her grandfather Richard Whitaker's army trunk, the man who taught her to hold a rifle like an extension of her body but never shared details of his service. Her hands trembled slightly. Emily opened the lock. Inside, neatly folded uniforms retained their creases despite faded fabric. A few medals lay in velvet boxes, and a thick leather journal. She flipped it open. She was instantly pulled into another world. Pages were filled with numbers, ballistic charts, mathematical formulas far beyond her high school classes, notes on spindrift compensation, a bullet's lateral drift she'd only read about on modern gun forums, tables on humidity, air density, temperature factors only long-range snipers cared about. But these were notes from the 1940 seconds. Emily froze. How could her grandfather, a World War II soldier, possess knowledge so far ahead of his time? A yellowed newspaper clipping fell out. It showed a young Richard, pinned with a medal by a high-ranking officer. The caption was brief. Recognized for outstanding service in the European theater, 1944. No details, no mention of sniping, no record of feats. But what made Emily's heart race was a small envelope tucked beneath. Its faded stamp read, "Classified." Inside, a typed sheet, the words nearly blurred with age. Lieutenant Richard Whitaker, designated marksman, credited with elimination of General Major Wilhelm Richter. Engagement conducted at 1,750 yards. Operation sealed. Record concealed. Emily inhaled sharply. A 1,750-yard shot nearly a mile and a half with a World War II rifle? The official world record for that era was only 1,000 yards. Her grandfather wasn't just a marksman. He was a hidden legend. In a secret compartment at the trunk's bottom, Emily found a small metal box. Inside was an old brass compass. Its trembling inscription read, "True aim comes from the heart, not just the eye. R.W." She clutched the compass, its cold metal pressed into her skin like a cryptic signal. Her grandfather hadn't just left her skills, he'd left a reminder. The heart was the true weapon. She thought she was done. Then she saw another thin file, filled with incomprehensible medical terms. She murmured as she read. Phrases stood out like knife cuts: abnormal ocular neural processing, enhanced spatial cognition, genetic anomaly consistent with Artemis program. Artemis. The name echoed in her mind like a shot ricocheting off a cliff. Artemis, the Greek goddess of the hunt, never missing her mark. Yet here, in World War II military documents, it appeared as a code name for a program, a genetic research program. Emily sank to the wooden floor. Dust swirled in the light. Her blood surged with a strange mix. Pride in her grandfather's legacy, dread at the implications. Were her skills not entirely her own? Was she born carrying the mark of a military experiment passed down through her bloodline? In the silence, she returned everything to its place, but she couldn't leave without slipping the compass into her pocket. It felt like a spine, a whisper from the departed, "Your path isn't yours alone to choose." As she locked the shed, sunlight flooded the fields. She walked away, her shoulders heavy but her heart ablaze. From this moment, enlisting wasn't just about saving the ranch, it was destiny, a continuation of a buried legacy. Would Emily Whitaker rewrite the Artemis chapter? Or be the next pawn in a game begun over half a century ago? A piercing whistle tore through the morning air. Hundreds of recruits poured onto the training field in the crimson dawn. Sweat and ragged breaths mixed with dust. Emily Whitaker blended into the crowd. Her oversized uniform seemed to swallow her slim frame, but in her eyes burned, not fear, but a defiant flame. Basic training at Fort Benning was a grinder. Every ounce of confidence from kids fresh out of high school was worn down by physical drills, iron discipline, and orders never explained. For Emily, ranch work had already toughened her body. What set her apart wasn't muscle, it was her cold focus, like aiming at prey in a Montana blizzard. But it was at the range where Emily's difference shone brightest. On the first day, as recruits struggled with their M4S, bullets flying wide, Emily stepped up calmly. She pressed her cheek to the stock, inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly, and each shot hit the target's center, as if the bullet had been programmed. When the target was pulled up, the holes clustered tightly in the red circle. Silence spread through the ranks, then whispers. "Just luck." "No, let her do it again. I want to see." And Emily did it again. Second round, third round, same result. Word spread fast. The Montana girl, that's what the battalion called her after the first week. Some looked at her with admiration, others with coldness, even contempt. In the military, standing out too soon made you a target. On a Saturday afternoon in the mess hall, Emily sat quietly with her untouched tray. Laughter, stories of families and sweethearts back home, passed like foreign noise. Across the table, a tall, red-headed soldier, Madison Walker, from a college military program, looked at her with a faint smile. "Pretty impressive," Madison said, "for a girl with an old Winchester to outshoot formally trained soldiers." Emily didn't respond. Her eyes stayed calm. Madison tilted her head, half mocking, half curious. "Either you're a genius, or you've got something the rest of us don't know about." The words slid by like a thin blade. They lodged in Emily's mind. In the days that followed, suspicion trailed her like a shadow. In the gym, some whispered she was favored. On the field, others sneered. The bank must love her. Shooting like that, her family's debt is covered. Emily swallowed every word. She answered only with cold silence and increasingly undeniable results. Then, one morning, at the 800-meter range, things pushed past the limit of challenge. Recruits took turns lying prone. Most shots missed the target. The wind was strong, temperatures shifted, the distance was daunting. When Emily's turn came, she checked her familiar scope. But in that first second, a strange feeling hit. The elevation knob was off. The sight was misaligned by a fraction, just enough to ruin the shot. Her heart tightened. Someone had tampered with it. There was no time to call an instructor. Emily inhaled deeply. She adjusted by instinct. She lowered her eye, her finger squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, the bullet soared. When the scope confirmed it, The hole was just off-center by inches. The second, third, and fourth shots followed, the grouping tight enough to cover with a coin. Instructors nodded. They took notes. But in Emily's heart, pride was gone. A cold realization took its place. Someone didn't want her to succeed. That night in the barracks, as the guard passed, Emily quietly disassembled her rifle. She checked every part. Nothing else was wrong. But the silence of the dark room reminded her of the file in her grandfather's trunk. Artemis. Continued monitoring of bloodline. It felt like invisible nets were tightening around her. On the surface, she was an exceptional recruit, but beneath, she might be a pawn in a plan she couldn't yet name. Before sleep, Emily whispered to herself, a silent vow, if this is their game, I'll be the one to break it. No one else. The windowless room at Fort Benning was lit by cold fluorescent light. It cast a harsh glow on the metal table. Emily sat straight, her hands on her thighs, her heart steady but strong. Before her was a file stamped classified Umbra. The door opened. A man stepped in. Colonel James Hayes. Silver hair. A stern face. His insignia gleamed on his chest. He didn't sit. He placed a black and white photo on the table. In it, a group of American soldiers stood before a range. Among them, Emily recognized him instantly, her grandfather, Richard Whitaker, decades younger, holding a familiar Winchester. Your grandfather wasn't just a soldier, Hayes said, his voice low and sharp. He was one of the first in Artemis. Emily kept her gaze steady, but inside, a storm swirled. The file in the old trunk, the advanced formulas, it all clicked. Hayes sat, his eyes locked onto hers. Artemis, he continued, is no myth. It's a top-secret program started in World War II. A rare few, 1 in 5 million, carry a unique genetic mutation. Spatial vision, time processing, ballistic perception. Faster, more precise than anyone else. Richard Whitaker was one of them. And Emily. He paused. He slid the file toward her. So are you. Emily opened the file. The first page detailed her test results. 28th vision, millisecond reflexes, sniper accuracy surpassing all military records. At the bottom, in bold, Artemis candidate, confirmed. A chill ran down her spine. She recalled the sabotaged scope, Madison Walker's glance, Harris's words. Nobody stands out like this without backing. Maybe he was right, but this backing wasn't favor, it was cold surveillance. Hayes spoke slowly, each word heavy. You have 2 paths. 1, complete standard training, become an exceptional sniper, but limited to routine missions. 2, step through Artemis's door. There, you'll train at a different level. Skills no public course teaches, but in return, there's no choice, no freedom. Your achievements, your victories, all hidden. Even your family will never know. Emily stayed silent. In that moment, she saw her grandfather, his weathered hand on the rifle, his warm voice echoing, true aim comes from the heart, not just the eye. And if I refuse? Emily asked, her voice strangely calm. Hayes leaned back. His eyes darkened. You'll still be a soldier. But understand this, Whitaker. We never release an Artemis candidate. Wherever you go, we'll watch. And one day they might call your name whether you want it or not. It wasn't an invitation. It was an ultimatum. When Hayes left, leaving Emily alone in the cold room, she felt caught between 2 worlds. One of discipline, camaraderie, and visible glory. Another in the shadows, where unseen bullets shifted power balances never reported. That night in the barracks, Emily opened her grandfather's compass. Its needle trembled, moonlight glinted on the inscription, "You always find your way home." She clutched it tightly. If she stepped into Artemis, would there be a way back? Dear listeners, are you still with me? Take a moment to relax, maybe grab a glass of water, then dive back into this gripping story. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this tale compelling. Don't forget to subscribe. The UH-60 helicopter roared through the night. No lights, only the cold wind slicing across Georgia's sky. Emily sat inside, her safety harness tight, her hand gripping her grandfather's compass. No name tag, no insignia, only silence and the relentless thump of the rotors. After 2 hours, the chopper landed at an unmarked base, surrounded by deep forest and jagged peaks. Emily stepped out. A single floodlight illuminated a massive steel gate. On it, no words, only a faint symbol, a circle pierced by an arrow, Artemis's mark. The gate opened. Inside was another world. Cold concrete corridors, biometric scanners, cameras tracking every step. Emily was led to a vast training hall. 10 others stood ready. No standard uniforms, just dark clothing, no ranks, no names. They were candidates. Like her, a woman stepped forward, silver hair tied back, eyes sharp as blades. I'm the Artemis training commander. Here, there are no ranks, no choices, only results. Fail, and you vanish as if you never existed. Her words landed like a hammer. The first day began with brutality. Candidates faced impossible shooting tests, moving targets, swirling winds, shifting light. Many faltered, some lost control. Emily was different. She didn't see bullets as metal in the air. To her, they were lines of light, curving to laws her body understood better than numbers. First shot, hit. Second shot, hit. By the 10th, the room was silent. The commander didn't praise, didn't nod. She only scribbled notes and ordered, continue. But Artemis training wasn't just about guns. On day 3, they were blindfolded, dropped into deep forest with only a knife and a water canteen. Objective: survive 7 days. Emily recalled Montana winter deer hunts, nights sleeping in snow. But this was different. This wasn't just survival, it was hunting humans. In the dark, she knew. Other candidates were desperate to prove themselves. Not all would play clean. On the 4th night, Emily spotted fresh boot prints in the mud. They led to a crude trap strung across the path. Someone wanted her out of the game. She stepped back, her heart pounded. No Taliban, no terrorists, just potential teammates. Emily chose to detour. She avoided confrontation. She knew the trap's maker was just a tester. The real watchers were above Artemis's command. After passing the trial, Emily returned to the base, gaunt, eyes hollow but brighter than ever. In the psych evaluation, the doctor asked one final question. Emily, when you aim and fire, what do you think about? She paused long, then answered, I don't think, I know. Like the bullet and I made a deal beforehand. The doctor said nothing. He jotted a few lines. A faint smile crossed his face, as if confirming something long expected. The weeks that followed pushed Artemis training into the surreal. They practiced visual recall, shooting targets after spinning blindly for dozens of rounds, dizzy but still calculating wind, distance, angle. They trained subconscious aiming, allowed only 1 second to sight, no more. Strangest of all was parallel targeting, where 2 candidates faced each other, each calculating the other's shot path using only eyes and movement. Emily excelled, but she no longer felt like the Montana girl hunting with a rifle. She was changing. Each day, the world felt different. Numbers, angles, wind, temperature, they emerged like a secret language only she spoke. One night, alone in her room, she opened her grandfather's compass. Its needle trembled. The inscription glowed faintly in the dark. She whispered, Grandpa, is this where you once stood? But before an answer came, The door swung open. The commander appeared, her eyes ice cold. "Whitaker, prepare. Tomorrow is the final test. And this time, you won't just aim at targets." Emily gripped the compass. The final test wouldn't be practice. It would be the line between candidate and true Artemis. The sky wasn't yet light. A cold concrete corridor led Emily to a room she'd never seen in weeks of training. The steel door opened. Inside was a massive indoor range. White lights glared down on tarp-covered targets. But instead of paper or steel, 10 meters ahead on a wooden platform stood 2 people. Both had hands bound, heads hooded in black cloth. One man, one woman. Torn uniforms, bruises visible on their arms. They sat motionless, like pawns in a game whose rules Emily didn't know. The commander stepped forward, her voice cold as steel. "Whitaker, this is the final test. Not just aiming, but deciding. 1 bullet, 1 target. You choose who lives, who dies." Emily froze. "What kind of game is this?" "No game," the commander replied. "In a real battlefield, you won't just shoot enemies. You'll choose between 2 evils. Artemis doesn't need calculators. Artemis needs those who take responsibility." Emily turned to the bound figures. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her hand rested on the rifle, its familiar weight now heavy as stone. "Both are our soldiers," the commander said, her voice icy. "They failed the program. One will be spared. The other will be executed by your hand or another's. But only your shot confirms you can bear the responsibility to the end." Emily's heart pounded. Years of hunting in Montana, brutal training, lectures on discipline and duty, twisted into a grim paradox. This wasn't about skill, it was about choice. Her grandfather's voice echoed, "True aim comes from the heart, not just the eye." She inhaled deeply, her eyes on the scope. Left, the man breathed heavily, his shoulders trembled under the hood. Right, the woman sat still, as if accepting fate. Time slowed. Each heartbeat thundered like a war drum. "Whitaker," the commander snapped. "1 bullet. Now, or you leave Artemis forever." In that moment, Emily saw the truth. This wasn't a shooting test. It was a test of obedience. Artemis didn't just want skill, they wanted tools. Her finger tightened on the trigger. But instead of locking onto a hostage, Emily exhaled long. She shifted the barrel slightly. The shot exploded. The bullet smashed into the ceiling surveillance camera. Sparks flew. The control room's monitor went black. Gunsmoke lingered. Emily lowered the rifle. Her eyes blazed as she stared at the commander. "I don't shoot without knowing the truth. If Artemis wants a puppet, you picked the wrong person." The room fell into tense silence. 2 guards raised their weapons toward her. But the commander didn't rage. Instead, a thin smile flickered on her lips. "Good," she said softly, almost a whisper. "Very good." She raised a hand. The guards lowered their guns. Backup lights flickered on. The hostages' hoods were removed. They weren't prisoners, but former candidates. Alive. Their eyes trembling as they looked at Emily. But alive. "Whitaker." The commander stepped closer, her gaze piercing to the bone. "You understood. Artemis doesn't need the most accurate shooter. We need those who know when not to pull the trigger. You just passed the most critical test." Emily stood there, her hand still gripping the rifle, her heart pounding like a war drum. Part relief, part horror. Artemis didn't just forge skills, they bent wills, tested morals, turned humans into living weapons. As she left the room, the commander's voice followed. "Welcome to the real Artemis, Emily Whitaker. From now on, the world won't see you as a soldier, but as a secret." Emily clutched the compass in her pocket. Its needle trembled. She understood. The door had closed. There was no way back. The CH-47 helicopter roared through the night. It carried Emily and her small team across Afghanistan's jagged peaks. Shattered moonlight glinted on the ridges, casting cold, fragmented beams. Emily sat by the door, her eyes scanned the alien, crowded land below, where every rooftop could hide an RPG, every shadow could swallow a life. Beside her was Sergeant Rico Martinez, veteran team leader, his weathered face coated in desert dust, and Marcus Webb, her former spotter in training, now her right-hand man. No simulations anymore. This was a real battlefield. "Fob Chapman," Martinez growled over the engine. "A mad dog's land. Brace yourself, Whitaker. One small mistake here, and the whole team pays." The chopper landed. Desert air hit like a furnace, carrying dust, diesel, and rusted iron. The base was small, a few steel containers ringed by concrete barriers and razor wire, but it was a critical hub controlling a key valley near Pakistan's border. That first night, Emily didn't sleep. She cleaned her rifle, listened to the wind howling through the passes, heard strange noises echoing from afar, dogs barking, sporadic gunfire, or just her tense mind. In the dark, she pulled the compass from her pocket. Moonlight hit the inscription. "True aim comes from the heart, not just the eye." Her grandfather's reminder pulsed like a silent heartbeat. The next morning, the first mission came faster than she expected. A patrol had spotted signs of a Taliban weapons cache in Kalara village, 3 miles from the base. Emily Webb and Martinez would take Hill 472, provide overwatch fire. The command table held a map, red lines crisscrossed like veins. Emily nodded. Her eyes scanned the terrain. Bare slopes, long sightlines, but also prime ground for enemy advantage. They moved before dawn. After 3 hours of climbing, sweat soaking their backs, the team reached the firing position. Emily set up her rifle, her scope swept the village below. Clay rooftops, children playing in alleys, livestock plodding along paths. A peace so calm it bred suspicion. "Ranger 6, this is Overwatch," Martinez reported. "In position, clear line of sight." Through the scope, Emily watched U.S. troops enter the village, moving professionally, balancing distance from civilians with house-to-house searches. Time crawled, her heartbeat steady with her breath. Then Webb's voice tightened. "East Ridge armed movement, 1,200 meters." Emily swung her scope. On the ridge, 5 figures moved fast, rifles slung. One carried a long tube, an RPG. They were seeking a high point overlooking the village. "Ranger 6, this is Overwatch," Martinez said quickly. "RPG preparing to fire on your position." Foster, the patrol leader, responded urgently. "Overwatch, neutralize now." The scope locked on the RPG carrier. Wind shifted in bursts, sunlight glared off the rocks. Emily felt the world shrink to a single point. Her fingers squeezed the trigger. The shot thundered. The bullet flew for over a second. Then the enemy collapsed. The RPG fell from his shoulder. It rolled down the rocky slope. "Target down confirmed," Webb shouted. But the others didn't flee. They returned fire. Bullets slammed into rocks around Emily. Shards flew. She pressed flat to the ground, swung the barrel, picked another target. 900 meters. Slow breath. Trigger pull. Another fell. The firefight roared for 20 minutes. Emily fired magazine after magazine, each bullet a measured breath between life and death. When the smoke cleared, 3 enemies lay still. The patrol withdrew safely, but victory left a heavy aftertaste. That night, Emily sat alone in a container, her hands trembling as they traced the fingers that pulled the trigger. The enemies' faces lingered in her mind, clearer than any target. Webb entered. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder. "You saved the whole platoon today, Whitaker," Emily replied softly, her voice breaking. "I know, but I still see their faces." Martinez appeared at the door, carrying 3 cups of coffee. He sat. His seasoned eyes met hers directly. Listen, a good sniper shoots accurately. A true Artemis lives with those memories. If the day comes when you stop feeling haunted, he paused, his voice lowered. That's the day you stop being human. Emily stayed silent. Outside, the desert wind howled like a warning from the land itself. In Afghanistan, a bullet didn't just pierce the enemy, it pierced the shooter's soul. Afghanistan's nights didn't sleep. On the hilltop, Emily cleaned her rifle. It still smelled of gunpowder, but her mind was clouded. The faces of fallen enemies wouldn't fade. She recalled Martinez's words, "If the day comes when you stop feeling haunted, that's the day you stop being human." But as she teetered between guilt and duty, a strange signal crackled in her earpiece. Not the official channel. A distorted voice spoke. "Whitaker, new mission. Target, Ibrahim al-Kazim. Operate solo. Do not report to command." Emily jolted. Al-Kazim, she knew the name. Not a Taliban leader, but a local university professor, known for criticizing both the government and military. A political voice, not a terrorist. She looked at Webb. He'd heard it too. His eyes darkened. "This isn't right. This isn't from Foster. This is Artemis's line." A heavy silence fell. They both understood. Artemis was controlling them directly, bypassing the military's chain of command. And this target wasn't a fighter, but an influential intellectual. "Emily," Webb said quietly, "we're being turned into political tools." In the scope, Al-Kazim appeared clearly. A middle-aged man, slight build, talking to students under an oil lamp's glow. No gun, no uniform, just a scholar speaking of freedom. Emily's finger trembled on the trigger. Hayes's voice echoed in her memory. "Artemis doesn't need calculators. Artemis needs those who take responsibility." What responsibility? Killing an innocent to balance power? She lowered the rifle. "I won't do it," Emily whispered. Instantly, the radio crackled again. "Candidate Whitaker refuses orders. Classified. Contaminated. Activate elimination." Webb cursed. He grabbed her arm. "We need to move now. They won't let you live." In that moment, Emily understood. The real enemy wasn't the Taliban out there. It was the shadow network behind Artemis. They didn't want thinkers. They wanted obedient weapons. And she'd just proven she wasn't one. Helicopter rotors thumped in the distance. Lights swept the ridges. Not reinforcements, a cleanup crew. Martinez appeared, his face grim. He looked at Emily, then Webb, saying nothing. He only signaled, "Go. Now." The three bolted down the ravine. Darkness swallowed them. Behind, gunfire cracked stone, dust exploded. The chopper circled, its spotlight swept like a predator's eye. Emily ran, her breath ragged, her heart pounding. In her pocket, her grandfather's compass rattled with each leap, its needle trembling as if guiding her. One thought echoed in her mind. True aim comes from the heart, not just the eye. Artemis had revealed itself. And from this moment, Emily was no longer the hunter. She was the prey. Afghanistan's mountains sank into darkness. On dusty trails, Emily Whitaker, trained to be the ultimate weapon, was now hunted by the hands that forged her. Each step brought a colder truth. Artemis wasn't just a training program. It was a conspiracy, a network, an invisible hand manipulating war and politics. Emily was no longer just Montana's sharpshooter. She was the heir to a hidden legacy and a target to be erased. But in her pocket, her grandfather's old compass rattled with each move, reminding her, true aim comes from the heart, not just the eye. The question wasn't whether Emily could hit a target. It was, could she survive when she herself was the target? If you believe Emily will turn from prey to hunter, striking back at Artemis, comment, Emily hasn't fired her last shot. If you think the darkness is too vast for one person to escape, comment, Artemis always wins. Subscribe to the channel, because in Season 2, The truth about Artemis will be darker than you can imagine.